can start an oil painting with a detailed transfer drawing, or you can just, because oil is so forgiving, you can just do a soft sketch with mostly oil. This is sap green that's just been thinned with oil. And you just basically are laying out. So the first thing I would do is I would measure the width. This is life size, so I'd measure the width. I'd measure the height, make sure my height is correct. I would measure the stem. So my stem needs to come up a little higher. And to make corrections, because you're painting with just such oily mixture, you can easily correct. Then I would basically just start laying in. And this is just a road map. You're going to change this as you go along. Mostly we're looking for, we just want to put in our darkest darks so we can see where they are. And I'm using a number 2 filbert. Filberts are my favorite oil painting brushes. Right now we're just we're laying in where the values are. This is an underpainting. If you do an underpainting in green, and it would never be this bright, but if you do an underpainting in green, it's called a Verdaccio, I believe, Verdaccio. Most people do underpaintings in burnt sienna or a brown, and it depends on what color your the background is. So I chose this background color because I just happen to have it, and I happen to like this gold ochre color. So we're just kind of painting the shapes that we see. And this you can modify as much as you need to, as often as you need to. So I would measure from that point to that point, and I know that comes to about right there. And we know it's pretty large petal, actually a bit larger than that. I don't usually video oil paintings, so this is actually the first one I've ever videoed, so just trying to lay in some different petals here. This one's very dark, so if I wanted to make it darker, I could just add a little more of the ultramarine blue to my underpainting green, and that would push it very dark. And it doesn't really matter if your underpainting is the correct color or not, because this is just basically values. This is studying values and where these shapes go. So, and the great thing about botanicals is there's so much margin for error. You really can't afford to make a lot of mistakes. So then I would kind of work my way up. So I'd probably go for this one. It's kind of rounded. It comes in there. And then the one that comes next to it, right here. And I hope you're doing this with me. I hope my class gets to do this, and we get to do this actually in class because it's a lot of fun. So we're going to kind of do that. We're going to come up here. And my paintings, and you'll find this when you paint, your paintings tend to grow when you do, when I paint oil, my paintings grow. Sometimes my paintings grow in watercolor as well, but because this one comes across up a little higher and comes up to there. You see that right there. And there's another petal here. And all the definition will be put in later. Right now we're just going for the big shapes so that we can see that everything, we don't want a tangent here. We don't want this and this to line up. So I'm going to put that over here like that. And that will be darker in there and behind there. And we'll make this shape a little better later. Okay, this points down, comes across here like that. Okay, and this is an awkward position for me, but that's okay. All right, so we see some real darks in here. Then we come around here with these, pushing the ones behind darker. Okay. Then we'll come down to this next tier. There's a nice shape right here. That kind of, it's actually two, isn't it? So, needs to come in a little more. And it goes like this, and then it comes up like that. Okay, so this is all that. And then it comes in here like that. Make that out a little bit more there. And I do talk to myself while I'm doing this, so there's a dark spot. This is all about a mid-tone in here. I think you'll find that it's a very good practice to paint in different mediums because it teaches you to pay attention to different things. What you're paying attention to in watercolor is not always what you're paying attention to in oils. So there's another one right here that comes in there. Let's get a little more dark. So we're doing this in here. This one. The hardest part of doing all this is just to maintain where you are. And if it's a little different, it doesn't really matter, truthfully. Okay, so we've kind of got a mid-tone in here. So let's get a little bit lighter in there. Like that. And we've got some lines going down here. We've got this really nice, whatever this is right here, that comes out there. It's going to be darker behind it. You don't have to lay in all your darks right now. You're just getting an idea kind of what's in here. So going for our mid-tones up here. And of course, you know, your mid-tones are a different color, so you're going to kind of factor that in. That one's pretty dark right here, that shape. And we're pretty dark right here. Get in a little of our lights so we can kind of see what's happening here. And don't worry that it's not the right color because it's not important at this point. This is just the underpainting. Just get some highlights in here. And if that's not light enough, you can add more yellow or more white. Just to give us our highlights. Let's get a little more white in that. A little more oil. And I keep my oil over to the side in these little oil All right, so now we're just going to go in and touch in these highlights so we know that they remind us that they're the tips of the petals. And this one is pretty much all light in there. And don't worry about blending right now. It's not that important. Okay. And I think we have a mid two. That's pretty light there. You can see how oily this is. It's very, very oily. And I will tell you, I am a much better watercolorist than I am oil painter. So that's pretty obvious, I think. I think this needs to come down more gradually like that. Great. So we're putting this in very light because we're going to paint over this. We're going to do an alla prima, which means you don't wait for it to dry. Okay, we've lost whatever was going on in there. There it is. Okay, this is lighter. And this is just a fun project for my watercolor students to do, so that you're not afraid to try new things. It's really important to try new mediums, to try different experiences. We're just softening all that. Okay, and you know this is linear, so we have to keep it linear. And we know under here is going to be darker, and we know there's a dark area right here. Okay, so as long as you have a basic outline of your rough shapes, you're good to go. Let's put that one in darker again. Right there. And I'm leaving this rough because I want that texture of that artichoke, you know, the texture of the artichoke. So you're going to find that as you move the paint around, you're going to be lifting up paint, so we'll be a little careful with that. And if you do want to blend it, just clean your brush and just go in there and soften with a very light touch. If it's too severe for you, just keep cleaning your brush. Okay. Great. So we're going to let this set up for a bit. Actually, I'm going to come back and work on this some more tomorrow, so mine will dry more than yours will probably. So there you have it. There is our basic shape of our artichoke. Now the important thing to also is to stand back at least 8 feet from your painting, and once you do that you start seeing all the issues you have, which means that this should be taller. My artichoke needs to be longer here. Okay. So that's easy to fix. We just bring this down a little bit lower here. Give ourselves a little more shadow in there. So I would just lower that all a little bit. All right. It's still fatter, but that's okay. I don't really have a problem with that. You can always add some more petals up here if you want. Make it a little taller.